everybody and welcome back to my channel. So today I thought we'd talk about thread types. Now it's really important to get the right thread for your projects, and it can be really daunting when you go into a haberdashery or a little sewing supply shop and there's tons of threads to choose from. And generally people go by colour, but sometimes the quality of the thread can affect your project. So I just wanted to talk you through threads that I use and threads that I recommend for different things, and some threads that I never use but what they're for. So the first threads I want to talk to you about is a synthetic thread. So I use 100% polyester thread for all my sewing projects. So these are the threads that I use on a daily basis for all my sewing. So whether it's embroidery, clothes making, anything else, homewares, gifts, I always use 100% polyester thread. I generally use Gutermann threads. I know a lot of people have their own brand of thread that they like. Gutermann's have served me well for years. My mum always introduced me to these. She said that they were always the best. They're good quality, the colour ranges are amazing, and they do various sizes. So in general I have 500 metre spools because I go through thread colours quite quickly, but I just love these threads so much. So you use 100% polyester thread or synthetic thread for all your general sewing. If you just want to do clothes making, I'd recommend them. They're good quality, they're not going to snap, they're smooth. Yes, okay, they're more expensive than other threads, but you pay for the quality basically. They slide through your machine easily, they don't break as often, they don't get caught as often. So if you're looking for an all-round good thread, I'd recommend you get some 100% polyester threads. And obviously you don't have to have Gutermann threads, you can use whatever brand you like, but these are the ones that I would prefer to use. Synthetic threads are also the best threads to use if you're using jersey fabrics, or knitted fabrics in general. So make sure that you write that down when you're using knitted fabrics at all. They always recommend using synthetic thread with stretch fabrics. But yeah, these are just good quality threads for any type of sewing that you want. So the next thread I'm going to talk about is an 100% cotton thread. The one I'm showing you is quite a thick, twisted Gutermann sulky thread that they generally use for embroidery. But it's actually the only 100% cotton thread that I had in my stash. That's how often I use them. So again, like the polyester thread, this is a good all-round thread to use for all general purpose sewing. But the only thing they do recommend that they're suitable for are natural fabrics. So any sort of non-man-made fabric, they generally say cotton thread's better to use with it. I'm not sure why. Maybe it has less damage to the fabric, I'm not sure. But yeah, any natural fabrics they'd recommend using 100% cotton thread. I generally don't use them that much. They're very soft, again, smooth, they run through the machine easily if you get a good quality one. Again, this one's a Gutermann one. Now, sulky Gutermann threads are generally used for embroidery, just so you know. I don't actually, especially for my machine embroidery, I don't actually worry about using embroidery threads. I generally just use the 100% polyester ones. But if you were doing just embroidery or you wanted to really branch out into that, then you know, have a go with the sulky threads. They're really good quality, they slide through the machine, they're very smooth. This one's like quite a thick twisted type. I don't know if that's a thicker version of it. It doesn't say anything on it. But yeah, so 100% cotton, again, good all-purpose sewing thread. So another type of embroidery thread that you may come across are metallic threads. So here I've got sort of a matte gold thread and a very shiny silver thread. A couple of things to point out about metallic threads. One, you'll probably hate them. They do break quite easily in your machine. Now these ones are by Madeira, metallic Madeira, and the sort of satiny gold one is a rayon and the shiny one is called a metallic thread. The rayon sort of like really shiny thread, I find is so much easier to go through my machine. It still breaks occasionally if you put too much tension on it, but it does slide through a bit easier. So I definitely recommend those over these metallic ones because they're so shiny. They just fray and they slide at all the wrong places, and the friction against them means that they snap and break all the time. And I really, really hate sewing with these. So when I found this type, I didn't actually know that was a different type, but I just found that the matte effect metallics were slightly easier to use. So definitely the rayon Madeira as opposed to the metallic Madeira threads are better. But yes, that's another type of embroidery thread that you can use on your machine, but experiment with them, see which ones you like the best. I've never tried another brand because I found that this one works. So I've stuck to it. Okay, so the next thread types we're going to talk about are silk thread. So these are, again, all the ones that I've got are Gutermann threads. So they're really, really shiny. They are sort of a twisted variety of thread. They're super smooth, super silky, and occasionally they are a bit slightly thicker. So these ones are a tiny bit thicker than this one here. This is another Gutermann sulky thread in a silk thread, and these ones just seem to be Gutermann silk threads. Now they recommend using silk threads for wool fabrics and silk fabrics. I'm not sure the whole thing of it, but apparently they have more give in them. So they don't, I guess with silk, because it's so fine and delicate, that there's still movement in the thread, so it's not going to just like be really, really taut on one edge. So that's what silk threads are for. I've never ever used them really. I don't even know why these are in my stash. I think they're just things that people have given me over the years. Maybe I've used them for a bit of machine embroidery before. Probably the sulky one that I've used for machine embroidery before, but I don't think I've ever used these. But apparently they're really, silk threads are very, very strong, very, very durable, but generally you'd only need them for silks and wool fabrics. Okay, so the next thread I'm going to show you is one that I actually found in my stash. I think it's another one that I just inherited from a sewing box that someone's donated to me. It's a very, very old one, but it's basically heavy duty extra strong thread, because I just wanted to show you the difference between them and how thick this one is. So really you'd only use a really heavy duty twisted thread like this if you were sewing buttons onto something, or you were doing some sort of hand sewing on upholstery and things like that. So generally in dressmaking, gift making, things like that, you wouldn't really come across these, but I just wanted to talk about another type of thread. So this one is 100% cotton, and it's just called extra strong. Oh, it's actually called extra strong button thread. So there you go. For sewing on buttons and any heavy duty stuff, you'd use a really heavy duty extra strong thread like this. Okay, so the last threads I'm going to talk about are moon threads or overlocking threads. So these ones are just cotton basting threads basically. So they are a very cheap version of say like the Gutermann cotton threads. Now you'd only use something like this for overlocking or finishing edges of something. You wouldn't rely on this to sew up a garment because the thread quality just isn't very nice. So if you look at them closely, they are really, really fluffy, and that just shows that they are really easy to break and snap, because the friction gets to them, and when they rub on too many things they just break and tear basically, and they become really fluffy. And then, you know, when you can't rethread a needle because the end's like all separated, you will probably find that every single time you use these. So generally you'd only use this in your normal sewing machine if you were overlocking the edges with an overlocking stitch, and then you'd use either these or a larger version of these for actually using in an overlocker. They're so much cheaper than usual threads, so people are really tempted by them instead of using good quality threads, but they will not last as long. Even in things like if you sewed up an entire garment just using these, I mean, you could sit down and rub the threads against the fabric too much and then it would snap, and then all your work could be undone. So only use these for overlocking and finishing off edges, or basting. You know, when you do a base stitch or a tack before you sew something, you'd use these because they're cheap, they're easy, and you can just pull them out afterwards and throw them away. So these are sort of disposable threads that you don't need. So that's it on our education of thread video. If there's anything I missed out, or you happen to know different types of thread that you think other people should be aware of in the sewing community, then please comment below. And if you think there's anything that I said that I need to add, then please comment that as well. I hope it's just a good introduction to different types of threads, and if you're a bit daunted by what threads you actually needed to buy for your projects, and I hope this is useful to you. Make sure you give it a thumbs up if you thought it was educational, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you again next week for another video. Happy handmade, everyone!